sustainability and human values. There is a quote from Nietzsche who says that rich people try to last long, but not French people, because they use their values as patience. And sometimes sustainability is not linked to human values. When you have different lines, say you talk about different lines, how do you cope with different lines? If different lines are different human values?
I'm not 100% sure I understood the question.
If you try to think about time, and that during time there are going to be conflicts, there are going to be different lines, different values. How do you link those values together to make it one line that will be sustainable?
Line, you mean product line, business line?
Yeah.
Okay.
The same as that.
Yes.
So part of what I believe is I may only have part of the answer to your question here, but one thing is like, for example, when we create values, and we have, for example, 6 values within the LinkedIn system, which include things like act like an owner and some other things, you force rank them. Right, so you go, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. And the reason why you do that is you say, well, this one's good for value number 4, but not good for value number 1. Well, then no. Right. That kind of force ranked value system can then help you understand if you have different lines of products that are in conflict with each other, how to resolve between them. Right? How to resolve to say, well, actually, in fact, we're going to promote this one, and we're not going to promote this one, or we're going to allow this one the way to do it. So, for example, like, okay, are we gonna build the product that is more for, like, for example, we could build, and probably will at some point, an entire kind of play that profiles play within corporate directories. We haven't really done that. And the reason we haven't done that at LinkedIn is because it's always the individual member first. So every profile feature we build thus far has been completely what you see kind of publicly on the profile.
And at the technology level, it is possible.
Yeah, and the technology level is possible. And for example, as 2 business lines, actually, in fact, we'll probably make a lot more money off supporting corporate directories than we will off the individual members. But because of the way the value system is ranked, we will get to that, but we'll get to that when we more or less go, okay, all of the things that we need to have happening on the individual member front are happening. Now we can build these things too. So you can have both, but that's how kind of resource prioritization goes across them as you're making decisions against a force-ranked kind of values list. And that's at least one framework for doing it. There's a frequent time where people who are trying to articulate the importance of mission and value just say, oh, but you're always doing good when you make more money or something, and that's just absurd, right? Yes. Like the people say, it's like, no, there are areas where these things are in conflict, and you have to figure out the principles for resolving the conflicts. Now, if you can, by a clever design, make them all perfectly good in alignment, that sometimes does happen, but it's not universally doable, right? So that's the reason why the way that I'm answering your question is a set of ways by which you make trade-offs against principles to have kind of call it an ethical or mission maximization.
Your first name and your business and your question.
Okay.
And then there's also one in the back.
Yeah, sure. For the next time.
My name is Felipe. I'm Brazilian. Our business is about creating beautiful in-depth illustrations to health professionals in order to give them a good material to explain pathology or a disease for the patient in order to help the patient to engage in the treatment and become healthier. Okay, my question is about, as I can see, I'm not sure because I'm a little bit young, but sometimes
as we are, we're all young.
Yeah, sometimes when life passes, like when we get older and older, I can feel that somehow people lost the sense of doing good things or so on. I'm telling my vision because in the university normally we start the university and we think that we're gonna change the world and so on. And as soon as life passed, we lost the sense of thing. It's happened somehow with me because of business and so on.
Because of that, you are in Paris now to make money.
And what I want to say is that it's something hard to say, but it happens. And my question is, if this has happened with my customer, for example, in my example, it's a health professional. In the beginning, the health professional wants to change people's life through medicine, through dietitian, and so on. But what I want to ask you is, if my customer is somehow losing the sense of doing good things, and my product is all about doing good things for the patient, how can I convince this guy and say, hey, take a look, I'm doing something for you, and I guess it's good, but you should remember what you were thinking when you were younger.
Don't forget your ethics.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you propose something to handle this problem?
Thank you.
Or your optimism. So one thing, you won't be able to persuade everyone. People change. Not everyone will be ethical. Not everyone will remember their youthful optimism. So it's an effort to get some folks to do it, not everyone. The second thing is that the thing that people find most persuasive in their ability to kind of step to their better selves is interacting with others, right? Look, there's people there are very smart people who meditate and through meditation become, enlightened. But I think the most of humanity, it's the social. We're tribal creatures. It's the playing off each other. So if I were looking at how to solve this kind of problem, I would be thinking about what are the ways that I can create community by which that positive energy can be rekindled, whether it's online or offline. I would be thinking about what are the ways that I can shape that community in ways that, because people, we all feel better when we feel optimistic and youthful and so on. People want it. They may be fearful of it, but they may be fearful of being disillusioned. They may be fearful of making a mistake, oh, I was too optimistic and I failed, or I just don't feel like I can succeed at this. But when people are kind of reinforcing each other with the kind of goodwill towards people, that's the kind of pattern that I would look at for doing that. Now, obviously, there's also people other kind of parts of this is we're also narrative animals, so telling stories about that path. Those narratives, well crafted, can really bring rekindle a heart of belief, a heart of passion, and so those are also kind of tools within that mission.
Thank you. Next, Madame.
Yeah.
My name is Laurence. I am a founder of a French impact investment fund. And my question was more from the investor point of view. And on the market, what we could call impact businesses. We see a lot of a real movement of entrepreneurs building businesses willing to change the world. Most of them are very small, very early stage. And as you know, it's difficult to have a business model only on seed money. And we're wondering if this is rapidly going to be a growing market, or if it's, even if there's 100% ethical businesses tomorrow, there may just be only 2, 5, 10% of real impact businesses that are here to change something, to be game-changing. That's the first question, is the market. And the second is, it is a real tension to have a business model that allows you to really invest in your impact issue. And it does have a cost. That's our experience now. And for example, customers would be very glad to have nice sustainable products or for very low prices, lots of tensions.
Yeah.
And do you think, or how do you think you can convince today people who are ready to put money in this, there's sort of a movement, to tell them that having business models and economic ambitions, financial ambitions, is important, but maybe you have to be a bit more finer in what you're expecting in terms of returns, without at all being a financial view.
So it's a unfortunate challenge in this whole kind of mission plus revenue is that much of the investing community kind of, at least in the US, gets confused. Because they kind of go, well, am I maximizing mission? In which case, well, why is this a business model? Or am I maximizing this business model? In which case, well, what's this kind of social good thing? And I can't tell you the number of times I've been in that conversation. I mean, literally lost count. And it's frustrating because you're like, well, it's obvious. Can I do both and make it work? And so I think that the key effort is to try to have, like, my own approach to this, part of the selection of investments I've done, have been trying to figure out which of these things can be relatively like high scale demonstrations that it's possible to have a business that really gets to scale, has, won't have, kind of Google, Apple, et cetera, like revenues, but will have real revenues and will continue to have an impact. And so, for example, one of the organizations I was on the board of for 11 years, something, is Mozilla and Firefox, which is a company owned by a foundation.
Sure.
And their goal is to essentially keep the internet and the web, and now working on mobile, open so that developers can do it and users are protected and that kind of stuff. And that's a valuable mission. It's not poverty, but there are many valuable missions. And part of what enabled them to do that was to actually get to a real revenue line where they had a real product with a real go-to-market and so forth. And so that's part of the reason why in the overall arc of impact investing, what I've been, kind of like a third of my comments are, think about the business model, think about the go-to-market, think about the, because those are the kinds of things that get there. And eventually the hope is if you have more of these product services companies that get to scale with that, then investors go, ooh, I want to build, because, like, for example, the way that the way that investing works on the commercial side is people say, well, I want to invest in the Airbnb of pets, or I want to be, like, it's the X comparison. So part of what we need on the impact side is the X comparison, right? I want to do the, the Mozilla of poverty. I want to do the, and that's what the work that you're doing, that I'm doing, is to try to get there, so that becomes then a significant scale category in people's heads. And then I think, perhaps I'm too hopeful or optimistic, but then I think that begins to tilt more in that direction. And I wanted to make sure the guy in the very back gets a question, because I think he's out of your vision.
Sure. Please stand up.
Hi, my name is Pierre, and I had the chance to meet Reid in 2012 at the Encore Awards in Stanford. So my startup incubated here, Solar Story.
You're very lucky.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Offers the ability for every organization to create a serious game with a line of code, which can be very useful. And we talk about actually the link between ethical behavior and learning. But to make a learning session, you have to make it. And how do you see the future of educational content creation we stand. And so, sorry, and my second question is, can I add you on LinkedIn?
Maybe the third time we meet. My LinkedIn, I connect with people on LinkedIn when I can and refer them to other people that I know on a case-by-case basis by knowledge. That's how it's designed. And so I know that you're smart and interesting, but I don't yet know how to refer you to various people in my network. But when I know that, I'm happy to do so.
You're right to try.
Yes, totally good. And then in terms of the first question, I think that I think it's very likely that with the rapid advancements in technology that we're going through, internet, mobile, artificial intelligence, a set of things, that the entire teaching and learning paradigms are actually, in fact, really in flux, including in terms of kind of content production, right? So, the kind of thing that I have been thinking about in this is how would you enable as opposed to saying, oh, I have an instruction designer and I have a team that's a little bit like a movie team and we construct it, and those are perfectly good. I'm happy to have those things continue. But for example, how would I say I have a network of hundreds of millions of professionals, and we want to comprise the set of different micro modules that would enable people to understand, for example, how to do analysis and impact investing, and how would we pick that up in snippets from everyone, and how would we tie that together, and how would we do that in a thing that was a platform that did most of the work, and then could even do adaptive learning, where it says, well, we've got these 5,000 different pieces of content, and then for you or for me, this is this ordering for you, this is this ordering for me, this is how you do maximum adoption, and all of those things changing from the technology side. And that's where I hope we're going, because to some degree this gets back to the kind of goal of all of us are so much better off if everyone has a good education, right? It's all of us are, right? And so how do we get there kind of as fast as possible within an economic model? And I don't know if that was your exact question, but that was at least an essay and an answer. It's easy to tell those science fiction stories, and it's easy to be misled either to the optimistic or to the pessimistic case. And so there's a whole range of things where, for example, you say, well, intelligence then get tied into like a defense network, and the defense network triggers a nuke or something else. And it's like, oh yes, I can tell that story. I can also tell that story by which the next big pandemic that could wipe out, like the Black Plague or something, wipe out half the human race, might be cured by artificial intelligence. So I can tell the dystopia story, I can tell the utopia story. And by the way, they're both, one of them might be true, both of them might be true. It's hard, there's a lot of nuance before you get there. The thing that I think gets lost is the really central questions right now, which are both everything from, well, if we're going to provide high quality education to everyone, I think AI will be really helpful. If we're going to solve disease, AI will be really helpful. But, for example, today we already have versions of AI that are in kind of how algorithms function to make decisions that range from credit for a house or a car or a college, or decisioning about your risk score for getting a parole from prison and so on. And those are all using algorithms, and many of those things are machine learning. And okay, how do we actually make sure that those are implementing the kinds of values that we want to aspire to and who we want to be as a society? And that's where I encourage the conversation to most focus on. Not because I don't think that there's a whole range of issues from here to now, but those ones you can see, and those ones you can begin to build and focus on as route to also how do you get to, for example, if you talk about, will there be an artificial intelligence that has human level intelligence? Well, how do you make that be ethical? Great question. Start asking it. Start talking about it now, right? But by the way, what's the shape of that going to be? For example, I can easily tell a story that says that even 100 years from now, all artificial intelligence will be some version of idiot savant, which is really, really good at some things and not good at others. And then it's the design of that will actually really matter. And so too much early conversation Whereas the questions that we have right now, for example, what is the interface between artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, and the strength of the network that our society is based upon, those kinds of questions, I would say, well, let's do those now. Let's talk about the other ones as we're getting closer and seeing what the actual landscape looks like, and then try to shape it in a way that has more positive outcomes. And that's where I kind of sort out to. So I try to get people to neither say anything that technology builds is great and then the whole AI future is rosy. These are not the robots you're looking for. Yes, that's right. These are not the Jedi. These are not the people you're looking for. These are not the robots you're looking for. Towards which is a phrase that has been used occasionally, robocalypse. And either of those, I think, is unhelpful.
So, my name is Noor. I'm in the food business. I'm developing plant-based ripened cheese to make the product much more sustainable than dairy cheese. And if I understood properly the first half of the discussion, you were talking about some companies having one line of business making profit, not necessarily for good or for an ethical reason, which can help financing another non-profit or more ethic or empathetic purpose. So you are having maybe a utilitarian approach on this. And I'd like to have your vision about many companies trying to do maybe lots of profit in one field and spending really little amount on other and making some greenwashing or maybe a lot of promotion of the part 2 when part 1 is not really ethical or empathetic with.
Well,
we will have one more question.
Okay,
So
great.
this is
well, look, to some degree, the way that companies are accountable is how we've set up the system. So if we've set up a system that says, okay, the only thing that matters is your P&L and your profit, and that's what we're going to report as the primary line in all the companies, and that's what we're going to refer to your stock price and everything else, then that's the system. We kind of get the system that we ask for, right? And one of the things I think we are trying to do, like I think everyone in this room is trying to do, is say, well, look, how can we have it so that companies can do good and benefit from that, whether it's a brand of how they contribute. Now, a little bit of subtext to your question is that what makes businesses work and capitalism work is that what productivity is higher value at lower cost, right? So you drive costs down. So you say, okay, well, how do I have as much visibility of social impact with as little cost as possible? That's a natural functioning for how a business operates, right? Now, I think that it would be good if we started valuing as a society. We said, well, let's do a carbon footprint index against all of the profit margin lines, and let's have that as part of how they're all reported and so forth. And could we actually, in fact, value that as a society? Because that would be at least one of the angles that would get to sustainability. But I think we need to get to agreement and coherence on that. And part of the reason I was kind of saying, look, there's this whole range. There's okay, make sure you don't be evil. And then as many people targeting, I'm really working on evolving a whole system in a more compassionate, more wise, more noble thing. But then there's a group of people say, look, I'm just trying to get by. I'm just trying to make a business work. I'm just trying to make some money. I don't really care. We actually need a bunch of those too, because if everyone was doing this, I'm not sure anyone would be making tires for cars, right? Like we need tires for the cars too. So
like Michelin,
yeah,
which is a worldwide leader.
Yeah, great, right? But I was just it's and so that's the reason why I think it's a range, and I think that what we want to do is create more of the sense of a set of rewards and incentives and metrics and systems of reporting and accountability to try to move in that direction, but it's small basic steps, not trying to get everything that way. I don't know if that was exactly your question, but I hope I was gesturing in the right direction.
Thank you. Last question, please, for today.
How Hello, hi, I'm Barada. I'm the co-founder of FilmZoo. We're a French tech ticket winner company who's come from abroad to
From which country are you from?
we're the only UK company to be part of this program. We're glad to be here. So I have a question that might be quite relevant. So what FilmZoo does is we are connecting the world through film. So we're using the power of film to help people learn languages, cultures, break down barriers, and to raise awareness of human rights issues or relevant issues. Now that we're growing quite rapidly, just under 1 million visitors a month, what do you think a platform like ours could really help to raise awareness around issues that you think are important, that we could do more, that could really make a difference? We're a global platform at the moment, so.
Not sure I know enough based on that to be able to say something intelligent, but I guess what I would say is I mean, to some degree, one of the things that product entrepreneurs frequently, this may or may not be a helpful comment, but I'm going to throw a dart and we'll see. Entrepreneurs normally think, I build a great product, I build a great service, that's what matters. Mm-hmm. It's as important to think about how do you get to market, right? And so frequently, for example, in commercial investing, if you say, great go-to-market plan, mediocre product, great product, mediocre go-to-market plan, I'll usually take the first with a great go-to-market plan because I can improve the product. Because getting it, now you're having growth, which is awesome already, so I know you're doing interesting go-to-market stuff. But like the kind of thing I would be thinking about is to say, all right, I have this inventory of content. I would almost be doing a kind of a social media and social news and contemporary news kind of hacking where I'd say, how do I generate little pieces of content that fit with a meme of the day that point back to the repository of, you know, here's where being green is helpful, here's where being compassionate is helpful, here's where, you know, and so you say, oh, well, we have this, or say, for example, you have one as a cross-cultural communication. Well, if you have one that's in cross-cultural communication, and you say, oh, here I'm going to generate some little pieces of micro-content really quickly so that, well, this won't work because this example is not going to fully work because North Korea has media control. But I was thinking North Korea and the US, how do you get them to go, hey, wait a minute, we're all human beings, right? Sure. In the dialogue, and then you get also caught up in the news cycle and get caught up in the social media cycle. And the implementation would be as a way of thinking about your go-to-market strategy is saying, look, we have this platform of rapid generation of small things that get into the dialogue that lead back to the longer things. And that could help grow and map our things to the issues of the day. And you're probably already doing things that are much smarter than that, but that was just an idea.
Okay. Now we have the conclusion of our brother Eric, who is one of the organizers. Thank you, Eric.
Actually, I will not give any conclusion because I don't pretend to give any conclusion. I just wanted to thank Reid to be here as a friend and perhaps to give to you a bit of context around this very exclusive meeting. Actually, you know a lot about Paris&Co, but perhaps not so much about Optic, which is a network working on the fruitful use of disruptive technologies for the society and for the human beings. And actually, Optic organizes the kind of meetings we just had with Reid in Rome. So we're just flying back from Rome. We worked about artificial intelligence. May I drop some names so it's confidential? So people like Marissa Mayer or Peter Thiel were around the tables. We were perhaps 30 people or less. Working on the impact of artificial intelligence on our society, on jobs, education, and so on. And having this kind of conversation, we see that it's nice to gather scholars and decision makers of big companies to have this reflection, but we need to put the entrepreneurs in the loop. And what we have just talked about today is something that you may want to implement in your own business model. And that's why, with Paris&Co sharing exactly the same goal, we decided to propose to you something I cannot say too much right now. No, yeah, it's just teasing. But I don't know. But I don't know what I mean is we will make an announcement in the upcoming weeks, let's say, and we will start something before the end of the year. So if you're interested in that, in impact investment, in the relationship between ethics and entrepreneurship and new business model, to do that in new business model, then be attentive because we will have something to present to you. So thank you, thanks a lot, Reid.